your favourite cuppa, or maybe your favourite tipple, and enjoy. This is Mirador Television.
Well, we made by the skin of our teeth this morning. In fact, we didn't. And poor old Annie there was busy giving us an introduction, and nobody could see her. But now they can. And poor Paul, when you see Paul Fowl, he's lost several pounds because, by the skin of the teeth again, he managed to just scramble after I sent him the ability to get on the program this morning. He thought I'd actually ignored him. God bless him. Let's just take a look. Ah, there he is, you see. Look, pounds have gone off him. Pounds have gone off him. He hates these last minute scrambles. But there we are. We're a bit light on facilities, a bit light on people at the moment. So here we are with Mirador Television out of Lewis with Keith Hayes and Paul Fowl, giving you words of wisdom on what's going on in the world. Morning, Paul. You're not your microphone isn't on. So there we are. Last minute stuff. Can you?
How's that? Is that
No,
okay?
that's right. Yeah, now we
Yeah.
can hear you. Yes, God
All
bless
right.
you. You're getting on top of this technical stuff much faster than me.
Could you change my name though, Keith, to Paul? I've still got
Oh, yeah, it's Pauk. Yes, we'll try that. Actually,
Anyway,
I didn't have time to do the stream this morning, and so it was the old one. I do apologise. His
no.
name is Pauk, not Paul.
What's your name?
Well, a lot happened over the weekend, Paul, that we want to talk about. There are in the news this morning. There's one or two catch-up things. A Met police officer has appeared in court, charged with the murder of Sarah Everard.
Yeah.
The MPs are clashing over women's safety, which I think is something that you're going to talk about. Not the MPs, but the police and confidence in the police.
Yeah.
It's like a football manager, I think. As the chairman says of a football manager at a football club, I got greatest confidence in him after he's lost 3 in a row. And so Boris has said he's got full confidence in the Met police chief, is Cressida, after 3 cock-ups in a row. So I would imagine that the warrant for the end of her tenure there isn't very far away. But I'm going to let you comment on that as well. Just for the moment, let's everybody can catch up with what's going on in the weather.
$3:30.
So when you see me with an umbrella, it's raining. So there we are. And it is a great Houdini. There he is, Houdini.
Right.
Pauk Houdini Fowl. We've got a new name for you. Right, Paul. The headline there: the Met police officer is to appear in court. To me, there is a much wider issue here, and that is one: has the police throughout the land, because they're broken up into various areas? Have they? Are we losing confidence in the police? And is the structure now fit for purpose? That's number one question that I want to ask you, and I know that you've got some thoughts on it. And number two is, I said yesterday, and it's not a very popular view, but these vigils bother me a little bit, is that people feel the need to rush to a park, to ignore a lockdown, and to threaten other people's lives, and to put everything in reverse that we all had to put up with for a year, for somebody that they didn't know. Tragic though the murder was, I'm not suggesting for one moment that it's not, and I feel for the family. But are we just behaving like the herd with something to do rather than genuine grief? So off you go.
Okay, let's take the police thing first. Right, just very quickly, because there's a lot to talk about the police. It's an understrength force. Their training isn't good as I remember it. They're hit from two sides. The public don't like them at the moment, and the government don't like them at the moment. So they're just being wedged like that, Keith, which of course leads to understrength numbers when you have things like marches, which means that morale in the force has gone. And I would say they're not the same caliber. I think in my day, I'm not doing one in the 70s and 80s, but there was the police did believe in serving the public. And I come back to the strong point, and I will say this to anyone in the world: we should have policemen on the beat. It is the only way to really source proper information, to give public confidence, and to enforce that the police are around. I go into Brighton many times. I've seen some awful arrests in Brighton which were handled improperly by the police, which in my day we wouldn't have done. Okay, we probably had more, we were under strength, but had more officers on the beat. I come back to on the beat thing, where actually you're talking to a human being, whether you're a hippie or a burglar or whatever, you can actually talk to a policeman. These days they are remote from the public, and they've put themselves remote. And I think it's partly bad leadership at the top of the police, and it's partly the government don't give them full backing. Boris has got to get those 20,000 police out, certainly, but let's get the training right, let's get the caliber right and the selection right. If you get that right, the public will have respect. The public, to me, talking to hundreds of people I know, even ex-police like me, have said there's no confidence in the police, and I share that.
Yeah, I mean, once again, what bothers me about those in charge today is they don't seem to understand communication. And here is a story about the fact that they're going to put police officers in the pubs when they open for women's safety. And yet the whole policy has been to move police away from the communities, be mobile through cars, have them in a centre. And now they're going back because of the crisis. I mean, okay, I'm sure if I was a copper and I was told that my beat was going to be the pub, I'd be delighted. I'd be the happiest man on earth. But it does seem to me a reversal of policy. And yet nobody has really said anything except, well, we're going to put some police into the pubs, plainclothes police, I suppose, or coppers in uniform. I'm not sure at the moment. But are there mixed signals again coming from another established entity within our society?
I think they've lost their way. That's a token to me, Keith. Putting policemen in pubs, what will to protect women? What will that actually do? I think that, I think the police, they certainly lost their way. I think these are tokens to say, look, we're looking after the public. Indeed, as I look out here, I'd imagine there's no police in the area I'm at in about a 2 square mile, 3 square mile, Keith. They just don't have enough people on the streets. The shifts are badly done. It needs a complete reorganisation. And the one thing I would stress here is that, and when I left, I said this actually to one of the senior police officers I knew, in fact, Assistant Chief Constable in Sussex. I said, the problem is that chief constables have become politicians and social workers, Keith. There's no leadership at the top. And I'm not going to pick on Cresta Dick. I've said words before many years ago. I don't think she's fit for purpose from an outsider. I'm sure she's doing her best. They need the person that I most revered, if you talk to the public and older people, Sir Robert Mark was probably the finest commissioner ever, because he understood the police, he understood the public, and he got enough forces. Now, Cressida Dick might be short of resources because the government aren't giving her some. That's fine, but she kind of has making one or two cock-ups at that level is bad, but she's made a lot of cock-ups, and she's got to go. It's who you choose, though, Keith. It's a remarkably tough job, but if Sir Robert Mark can do it for about 10 years and be loved by the public, then somebody else can do it. We've got to get. I think the public want to respect the police, but the police are giving them every example of not respecting them.
I was having a chat last night to Norman Baker, our former MP here, I mean, Norman's got his ear to the ground. He's a pretty astute politician, was an astute politician, and he's followed that up. He's actually become a very good investigative journalist as a result of the work he did on Dr. Kelly. But one of the things that he said was that, in his opinion, the decision to arrest ladies by male police was made well below Cressida Dick's level. Now, does that show that if that's true, does that show that they didn't realise the importance of it, or that she's lost control of her force?
Looking at that interview and looking at the body language, I think she's lost the confidence of the government and obviously the Home Office, and probably at the street level, Keith, she's lost it in the Met. And it's easy to do. I do appreciate that. But we've had some wonderful chief constables in Sussex and dreadful chief constables. I suppose the police just simply reflect society. You get bad people in society, bad people in the police, and it's probably a similar percentage. But the answer is that Boris and the Home Office have got to crack down, get the leadership sorted out, get the pay structure right, get the right sort of people. Because I've met some very rude police in my time, and when I tell them I'm an ex-policeman, I don't think I was ever rude to a member of the public. And you used to call the public sir and madam, whether they might have committed a crime. You treat people equally, and that's what they're not doing now.
Yeah. That's very interesting. I wonder if you'd allow me one of my famous red herrings. But one of the things that worries me a little bit is this business of, it came out a little while ago, every policeman should have a degree. Now, forgive me for going back in time, but I over the period of I'm not going to tell you how many years of journalism, because that'll tell people I'm over 35. But you meet some wonderful people and some interesting people. And I interviewed shortly before her assassination Indira Gandhi. And if I can tell you that when she walked into the room, I understood what charisma was about. It just swept over you. She was a remarkable lady, and anybody that I've spoken to since says exactly the same thing. So it wasn't just me. But during the interview, we talked about the fact that in India, and this was obviously just before her assassination, as we're going back into the 70s. But in India, they made sure that everybody got a degree. And I said, well, people say that they turn up at the petrol station, and the chap wiping the windscreen has got a PhD. And she said, Mr. Hayes, she said, we made a huge mistake in trying to make sure that everybody got a degree. And she said, and I hope the people of Britain don't make the same mistake. Well, Tony Blair was pretty good at having spies everywhere. And I think he was listening in on the interview and heard it, because immediately we made the same mistake. And I think it's still a mistake. And that we seem to propagate that mistake. So to me, you're quite right. We reflect the society that we've got. Everybody's got to have a degree. And I'm talking to some old school chums who have been very, very successful in life. And part of the debate is that they left after the fifth form. They didn't go to university. They went and did other things, their apprenticeships in those days and so on and so forth. And they're hugely successful people, hugely. And I think we've lost the plot. Everybody must have a degree, and yet we propagate it. And that reflects our society. I don't want a hairdresser who's got a degree in perms. You can see why, but
that's a nice haircut. Keith, what's interesting, you've hit. I had to give a speech in the city once about that, And Blair was saying we need 50% of people having degrees. We need, if it's a race, all 9 people should get medals. That's poppycock. What it should be is that by giving everyone a degree, you're devaluing the very thing you should value. In other words, when I got a degree, it was only 0.0001% of the country. Now that was back in the 70s, and obviously you quite rightly they've widened the degree. But as you say, if you're interviewing for people in the city or interviewing anywhere, you get which college is this? Oh, Huntingdon College or Hertfordshire University or whatever. They've cheapened my degree for a start, and everybody who followed. And I can't believe what I'm going to say now, but I understand this is true. Sussex University operate a policy, I think, where you can fail first year. If you fail, you can fail the first year about 3 times and still come back. And I find that incredible because we were rewarding failure, Keith.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the education system needs to be looked at, especially degree-wise, because the Germans, this is a good thing. I compared Britain with Germany in one of my economic sessions. Germany's got it right. The degree people, fine, they've got a few, but what they regard it as is working apprentices, actually working for the German factories and doing the clever jobs at BMW. They don't care so much about a degree. They like people who are qualified, i.e. a qualified engineer there is revered. I don't think a qualified engineer is revered here. So
you wouldn't know one if you saw one.
Exactly. so it needs to, again, education needs to be totally reformed, I think.
I agree with you. I mean, I went on a real rant yesterday. I mean, I was really getting very upset with our society and the way it's reacting to things. But of course, it's only my opinion. But then I also pointed out is we need loudmouths. I mean, I can remember there was a lady here who was from St. Lucia called Susie Cunningham Kemp, just a delightful lady. And I was sounding off one day, and she turned to somebody at the bar and she said, "He's a loudmouth." And I always remembered that, and I've always been very proud of the fact that I am. And just sort of like Piers Morgan is, the need to be loudmouths. And actually, in North America, the loudmouth is king. The phone-in host is king, and queen, if I may say so. And that's why so much attention was paid to Oprah Winfrey. She is America's great female loudmouth, and so she's the queen. So I can't really fault her the fact that Meghan and Harry decided to go on her show. But we need people to shout and scream, because what comes out is debatable points. I don't have to be right. You don't have to be right. Piers Morgan doesn't have to be right. But as long as we actually shout about something, then quite often people scurry to talk about it, to debate it. And that's really the value. How's that for a rant?
Very good. Well, as I say, one thing I did learn in my terrible education, what I did learn is that democracy is a total misnomer. What it was, how democracy was like a Greek speaker's corner. How this is, not many people know this, Demosthenes, etc. You would have, the election would be, Demosthenes would stand up on a plinth, and whoever shouted loud got the crowd, and that's how they vote. So there's never been a democracy. Democracy has never existed. It's those who shouted loud, and that's historically accurate. So
the famous Athenian democracy, which people keep quoting, only lasted for about 20 years.
That's right.
And they gave it up. And it wasn't a democracy anyway, because the only people that could vote were citizens. If you were a slave, if you were a woman, if you were all sorts of exclusions. So by the time that they finished, there were about a handful of them all making decisions. Sounds like the cabinet in local government.
Well, it's funny, you talked about Indira Gandhi, who is a heroine of mine, actually. I think you're right, Keith. If you go back, the word benevolent dictator, somebody once said that actually it sounds awful to people, but the best form of government at the right time sometimes is a benevolent dictatorship.
Benevolent dictatorship, yeah. I mean, it is difficult to draw the line between benevolence and authoritarian. I mean, I think that somebody like Tito got it right. And when you go to the Balkans, people actually they revere Tito, and he was quite extraordinary in as much as he pulled the country together. But by the same token, I also met some people that suffered at his hands, and there was nothing benevolent about him.
But sometimes, Keith, if you're a leader, you have to take a tough decision, and you'll upset a lot of the population. But that's being a leader. I mean, we'd all love to. If all of us loved Boris, it would be a terrible thing because there'd be no argument. You know, what a good job he's doing. So I do think that people, he's a bit tough here, but the government are trying to do a good job. Every government tries to do a good job. It's just that the authorities must make sure there's little corruption. But as we know, politics is very corrupt at the moment. So I don't know what the answer is, Keith. It's there's got to be reform. I think we spoke about that. There must be reform in lots of reform of capitalism, reform of the police, reform of government. It's clearly an unfair assembly situation. So, I think post-COVID is the word reform, but sensible reform. Yeah, sensible reform.
Okay, well, we've been yattering on, the two of us, for 20 minutes now. We were on a bit late, but we have been on 20 minutes. So time to take a little bit of a break. And then we'll come back because there are other issues we wish to talk about this morning.
I'll grab a coffee.
When you miss the train, don't despair. Have a nice cup of coffee. And perhaps a mince pie. At the Runaway on Lewes Station. After that, why worry about the next train? The Runaway on Lewes Station. Relaxation beyond compare.
Here we are back again. Keith Hayes and Pauk Fowl.
Oh, yeah. My Czech name.
Paul,
Yeah.
I've said it before, and I'll say it again. That the level of politician, and for that matter, civil servant, is not particularly high at the moment. It doesn't mean to say that there aren't some little jewels in the crown, but most of it is unpolished, and they do seem to be doing strange things. And now the EU is beginning to say, "Oh well, this AstraZeneca jab, which is the one I've had, is unsafe and it's blood clots and so on and so forth." Whereas all the top medical people say it's absolute rubbish. There is no evidence whatsoever. But the politicians in Europe seem to be turning it into a cause célèbre as to why this particular vaccine shouldn't be used. Now, one, do you put any credence in what they have to say? Two, are you appalled that politicians get into the act like that? And three, if you were offered AstraZeneca, would you take it?
Yeah. Well, AstraZeneca used to be a client of mine in banking, so I've got a nice warm feeling towards them. Yeah, apparently AstraZeneca is one of the better ones. I did Pfizer, Keith, which was a 2-part one, but they're all good. I've got to say this, and again, I've got French blood in me. I got to say that EU is, I think, a wounded tiger at the moment that wants to find any cause célèbre to have a go at Britain, and the reason is quite obvious: because we pulled out. And I think they've got to get over that, Keith. And this is why here we are offering to give them vaccine, and it's like extracting teeth. I don't know how Boris gets on with the various leaders, but as I say, it's especially France, not so much Germany. They're whinging, Keith. They really are whinging. Now, we've not done Brexit to destroy the EU. Again, it sounds crazy. I am a European Confederation fan, but it needed reform, and that's my view. It needed reform, and I think that I talk to German friends. It's interesting. I used to work for Deutsche Bank, as you know, and they have no hang-ups. They actually recognise now that maybe if things go very badly for them, they might take our course. You see, that's the problem. I think what the whole of Europe's worried is disintegration. You have Hungary want to go on their own. In other words, I'm sure we'll be accused of destroying EU, but I think if it does go, and I don't want it to go, it should be reformed. But if it does go, they'll obviously blame us. It's as simple as that. But the EU is not. I worked for them for a year, as you know, in Eastern Europe, doing quite a big job for them. And I'm sorry, it has corruption. It has too much bureaucracy, and we've all agreed these days, post-COVID, let's cut down on bureaucracy. It's the thing that stifles business. So my view is quite clear. EU is smarting, and in 2 or 3 years' time, will be proven to have gone it alone and set an example for a proper European Confederation. I'm not anti-Europe. I've got so much foreign blood in me, I should live abroad. But I just believe that we've actually made a very bold but right decision. And so it's proving. So your AstraZeneca thing is caught up. It's a political thing. This vaccine, you know, we don't agree with that. So that's my view, Keith. I just hope that France will just calm down when they get a new leader, which they need. And Germany, as I say, is sanguine. Germany. If I went to Stuttgart to see friends of mine there, they'd have no beef about us leaving Brexit. And in fact, secretly, a lot of them would like to extract themselves because there's so many misfits in Europe. Okay, I've had my speech, but
I actually go along with you. Reform is a word that's almost like a swear word to any politician.
Yeah.
And to be quite honest with you, if you've got a cozy number and somebody is saying, "Hey, this has got to be thrown into the air," I'm not sure what I would do. It's all very well to say something when you're not on the outside. I'm going to change everything on the inside. You get on the inside and it's nice and warm and cozy, and you think, "Oh well, But you're absolutely right. Reform will not come to the EU as it's presently constituted. They don't want it. Well, when I say they don't want it, is the elite in Brussels don't want it. And I think that if you create an elite like that, is what what you're inviting everybody in your community, your society to do is to create a similar elite. And that is not good for the average person.
Well, I've a very, you know my views, Keith. I remember talking to a friend of mine who's a lawyer, but he's very anti-Brexit. I said, well, I just simply look at the European Manifesto. It claims that we'll bring everybody up to the level. Sorry, could you? Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry. Am I boring you?
You never bore me, but
No.
I'm just making sure that we don't miss any headline,
Okay.
so that we waffle on about one thing only to find that the situation has changed. So no. The viewers are listening to you. I am out of one ear, but I'm doing something that's useful.
This is a key point. No. The reason I bring this up, it's a really key point, which forget all the other arguments. Europe's manifesto, the EU manifesto, was to bring every nation up to the quality and the economic strength of a Germany. What it's done is to bring it down to the lowest common denominator, which means every country in the EU has been damaged by that. I rest my case. It's a club that's got 3 or 4 people buying the drinks, and the rest of the crowd are just on a freebie.
Yeah,
and I always use that at any talk I give. I use that, and normally I get some good response from that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good analogy, I think.
Yeah.
Right, let's move back home again, because one of the things that bothered me, and I actually had, when I was chatting to Norman last night, this came into our conversation, and that is that this business of vigils and so on. I mean, as you say, the police are caught between a rock and a hard place on this one. So it's easy to criticize the police and so on, and we've agreed and we've talked about this morning that the police needs reform and so on. But what about the public? Because we keep on dashing off and actually putting the whole lockdown thing at risk. And nobody is saying anything anymore. It is it was a vigil for I think that this murder is a tragic one, very unhappy. But what really bothers me most is I think that if you say anything to criticize these people, you actually you're the bad guy.
Yeah.
What's your view on these vigils?
I think the people who gathered have look. Let's go back to cavemen days, Keith. It's rather like we all like to be around the fire telling stories to each other. People are united. The psychology of the march and the psychology of a gathering is that people, because you're very weak as an individual, you get strength in a crowd, Keith. So that's it. And when we used to police the right to work marches and things like that, the police's job is to actually get their intelligence right. If the process is this, you get the intelligence right, find out, are there any agitators there, neutralize that. The crowd, you give
Excuse me, Yornie, it's not you. It's I was up late last night doing things, and then up early again this morning.
I was up at 2, Keith, so we could have started the program then. Yeah. No, so the thing is, Keith, if the police get the intelligence right and act properly, and the crowd and sort out the agitators early on, and the crowd, most of the crowd aren't vicious people. They're housewives. They're probably ex-police, whatever. So the trouble is, the police have to get the intelligence right. What happened is, I think they were taken by surprise. Yes, there's an argument. Social distancing was, you can't set a precedent for that. So it was wrong. But it was the heavy-handed bit at the end I found was kind of grated, Keith. I didn't see the whole aspect, but it seemed to have got out of control. And once law breaks down, you've got a problem. But I would imagine 98%, 99% of the public who were there were doing it in good faith. But they did break a law. In Australia, somebody would have probably been fined or arrested. But we have a different democracy sometimes. So I don't know what the answer is. It's a tough one because people also, there's an element of, it's a great chance to get out away from the open prison of home, Keith. So in other words, people didn't think of going to Clapham Common, but great, it's a great way out. We can have maybe get a little beer, etc. also, don't you think that the public, when they've been through such a very tough time, like to have a prick at the establishment to say, look, we've been kept in. So there's an element of frustration of being stuck indoors for so long, a genuine grief, which I think we all had, and maybe they put social distancing and everything to one side, Keith. But is it an arrestable offence? There's ways of getting around to it. I think the police might have acted a bit precipitously, Keith, is my view. I didn't see much of the footage, but I think previous police forces would have dealt with it very differently. But maybe they don't have the manpower, maybe they don't have the intelligence, etc.
Yeah.
Before anything like a gathering, you've got to gather intelligence, Keith, and then you can know how to control it.
So you think there's bad decision making as well on this one?
I think so. It's part. You've got to blame the crowd to some extent, Keith. Even if it's Mrs. Jones, a devoted housewife. Yes, it's great that we express grief, but hey, if we did that for every, I'm not saying it is terrible what happened, but if we did it for everybody, then the parks would be full, wouldn't it? And you'd have, social distancing would have gone by the board. It's a tough one, Keith, because I think many people, to be honest, thinks some of the social distancing is a bit ridiculous. So I can think there's an element of youngsters saying, well, sod this, excuse my language, sod this, I'm going. And I bet you if you look at the collective of all the people there, it was from every part of society. So you can't criminalise them, but they could have made some fines, but I don't think the police probably had enough numbers to actually do much other than. What the thing is, Keith, you've got to remember, and I say this to everyone I meet, the police are at a disadvantage. If a policeman's attacked, he mustn't hurt the person who's attacking him. You've always got to actually, you're defensive. But anyone who attacks you, a villain, a member of the public, they can attack you, and you can't resist, because a policeman mustn't be seen to be hit somebody. So you, as a policeman, I know that you felt that whoever was attacking you had the advantage, because you couldn't really defend yourself, because if you hit somebody, you'd be up before the beak, the magistrate. So the thing is, Keith, I think that the police have got to get their act together. The public have got to also show a bit of common sense, the mix of the two. But so many marches have gone well, so many gatherings have gone well. How many have really gone wrong in the past, Keith? The poll tax riots, yes, but generally, right to work marches and that go fine. Look at the gay parade in Brighton, absolutely fantastic. 300,000 people, and there were minimal arrests, Keith. So it can be done if the public are sensible and the police have got the right intelligence and monitor it properly. Simple, but it's not. Does that make sense?
We're all very complex. Paul, now, because once again, I always find my conversation. So we had a little chat last night about transport and so on. He had some very interesting inside stories. But from your putting your financial hat on, is everybody is saying there's going to be much more working from home and so on and so forth. Well, that means less traffic on the trains and the buses and so on and so forth. So from an economist's point of view, from the financial point of view, what do you think is going to happen, A, with our transport systems, and B, can we, in, say, 30 years' time or 40 years' time, looking into the crystal ball, see transport totally different to the way we understand it today?
Yeah. But by the way, I'm glad the H2 thing was it's kibosh, isn't it? The train.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was just, Keith, I can't believe it was like a 5-year-old put that up. I just cannot believe the government actually consider that. I'll put that to one side. Okay. There's no doubt that obviously travel, I want to get back to Australia at the end of the year. It'll be the end of the year. So part of it is we're saving money, but what do the airlines do? What do the cruises do? I think.
And what do the train companies do?
Well, exactly.
And for that matter, the bus companies. Yeah.
Well, I suppose the simple answer would be put fares up. If we're all caught by travel, Keith, it's a necessity for us. You could argue that the simple fix for a bus company, if the numbers go down to travel, you obviously, as the economics say, you put the price up. But if you put the price up too much, you lose on both counts. So I can see air travel will still be the preferred choice, I think. That's the one, but that's going to take time to get going, Keith. God knows what British Airways and Emirates have lost. I'd like to see their figures, but I guess, they're massive companies, but they will be winners once the tourism comes back. I think also the public, well, this is good for Britain. I think every nation's public probably want to see a lot more of their own country. We've been locked down in it long enough. I'm sure people who've never been to Scotland from the south of England will think, well, hold it. It's been costly in COVID. We're not going to go abroad to a sunny place. How about we go to Scotland? And apparently, I understand Scottish visits have gone up considerably. So, Keith, it might, from every disaster comes some good. And I think that our travel outlook will be very different. I'll still do my 2 trips a year to Australia, but the price will probably be astronomical. So you pays your money, you takes a chance, Keith. But I think if you say that everyone's not got so much money now, although we're all going to go on a spending spree, as we know, it means that you're likely to stay at home because it's cheaper. Like if you go down to a farm in Devon, that's fine. The kids like it. It saves you flying to Botswana or South Africa. So there's winners and losers. Trains and buses are necessary. So I suppose they wouldn't be allowed to fail, and they won't fail, but the numbers probably will go down, Keith. If, as you say, we're working more from home, I won't take the buses I used to take. I haven't taken a train in ages. So if they get into trouble, I guess there'll be government support. But at the moment, their cash flow's okay. If they can get back in the next few months, then they'll build up. But we've got to keep the infrastructure together, Keith. We can't afford to lose a train services or buses, whereas air travel is a bit more luxury. So I think air travel will be the one that people most want to go on. But at the same time, they'll want to see their own country, which I think is good.
Bring back steam trains, that's what I say.
Well, absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
The romance would bring everybody back to travel by train.
Yeah. Orient Express.
Actually, there's no reason why not, because we've now got smokeless fuel, apparently. So you could run steam trains. I mean, the big argument about steam was that it was polluting, and of course it was. It was chucking that stuff out all over the country. But now, if it can be done the other way, I'll be very happy to travel on a glamorous train. The trains have become so sterile now. All it is it's a seat in which to put your bum, and you sit there for an hour, and you move it when you get to the other end. I mean, it's pretty grim, really.
Well, you and I, Keith, can remember the great days when I used to travel back at 1 a.m. from the city, and you had the open bar in the train.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you'd meet jolly fellows and jolly ladies, and it was great. And I think that was tremendous. And they earned money in the railways.
Yeah. One of the things that I liked about the old train is when I was working in Birmingham, I would come down to London fairly frequently, and I would get on the train, and there would be somebody like Lou Grade, the great impresario who started really television in this country, who smoked a cigar and gave words of wisdom to everybody. And you would get in, and you would be traveling third class or whatever it was, and he would be traveling first. But there was no distinction in the dining car. So in you went for breakfast, and in Lou would toddle with his cigar and so on and so forth. And if you were good, you would devise that you sat next to him. And if you weren't, you did it by luck. But it's fascinating to be able to, and you found that with all sorts of, famous is a funny word really, but well-known people of the day. And it was great to talk to them. You mentioned Eddie George the other day, and I actually had breakfast with him in Switzerland, quite by accident. He was there and I was there, but he's perfectly happy to sit, as most travellers do. They really like company, and that's a benefit to us people who need to talk.
I can't match that, Keith, but I've had Edwina Curry sat opposite me on a train journey about 25 years ago. I think it was during the Salmonella thing. And what a charming lady, and B, she said, I must go to the toilet, and there was her ministerial brief was there, her briefcase, and I had to look after it. But it's amazing who you meet. It's just, I think everyone should enjoy train journeys because you can speak to each other. But the new trains are so sterile, nobody speaks to each other.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it seemes to me that we've had a generation that has deliberately set out to make sure we don't talk to each other. Once again, I'm famous for my red herrings, but that's one of the things when you went across when the Berlin Wall was up, you went across Checkpoint Charlie, and those people who had experienced and been there before, they said, right, we're going down to Potsdam. We've got perhaps an hour's ride. Keep your eyes open and see if you can spot a pub. And that you couldn't. The reason being is that a communist authority don't want people chatting. And here we're doing it deliberately because of...
Yes. Thank God we live in England.
Indeed. Right, Paul. Now, I actually was a bit naughty because I gave you an agenda because I do value your knowledge on some of these things, which is far superior to mine. I just wind people up and get them debating. You actually provide the background in a quite sensible manner. And I said to you, anything else that you wanted to talk about this morning was on the agenda. And since it's 8:22 and we're approaching sundown, what else do you think we should talk about this morning? What's caught your eye?
I'll just go through my notes again. We've covered the vigil, the police. The police was the key thing, Keith, I wanted to talk about because I think that the government should act quickly on that. If there's no faith in the commissioner, you've got to act very quickly. Because the public, the thing about crowds, Keith, is we've all been in crowds. We're united in crowds, but the trouble is it just needs one or two people to push, and suddenly there's I remember the Right to Work march in Brighton, so that people can understand it. It was all going well. We identified there were 20 agitators from some very, very left-wing and socialist and extreme people, and at the back they were at the back pushing people. So in the end, the fights came about. The police and the public were getting on very well. It just needs a few agitators and the agents provocateurs. This is what the police have to identify. Take them out early, and when I say take them out, arrest them, not shoot them. But and it's peaceful. But I've been on marches where they've been delightful, and you're talking to the police are smiling. It can be done. I think they've got to work out a way of doing it. But I agree. The worst thing is the COVID versus vigil is a tough one, Keith, because I understand the public. All of us love to be, when Diana died, when anyone who we know die, we like to remember them in a nice way in a united crowd. The problem is COVID regulations don't allow that. So I can understand why people did it, and it's an emotional thing, isn't it? But the law is the law, and I suppose the police. But the police action, I only saw clips of it. It looked very heavy-handed, Keith, and that's the thing that they probably got wrong. But what do you do?
Mind you, I mean, I have to say, there are some countries you can't criticize, and France is one of them at the moment. But I was in Paris during one of the riots, and those police, the black uniforms and the shields and so on. I'll tell you, I wouldn't have messed with them.
No prisoner. Yeah, absolutely.
They were frightening, absolutely frightening. And the funny thing is that the French public totally accept these sort of raiders, this SAS force, as it were. But in this country, no, we haven't got the copper on the beat, and yet we all believe that that's what we should have. So we treat the police quite differently, and if they get heavy-handed, we really dump on them. So no, you raised some very good points.
Well, Keith, I as a young policeman, I was terrified going out on my first day on my own. But the public in those days, the public would talk to you, and the idea of the police force is to protect the public and to serve the public. I think that's often forgotten.
Yeah.
I won't go into details for the viewers today, but my life was probably saved by my mouth many times. Your best weapon in the police is using your mouth. When 50 Millwall supporters were about to kick my head in Hastings, and I talked my way out of it, and they said, "What a good bloke." That's good policing, because I didn't have to call anybody and didn't have to get in the front now. So the answer is the police must use, there's a process in policing. You don't go to hitting people before you've done the other levels, Keith. And I suspect that the police don't know how to talk to the public these days, because all the incidents in West Street I've seen is there's been a misunderstanding and the police arrest everybody, 2 witnesses and the person. So, this is crazy land. So
I can believe you talk. I would have loved to have seen that. I mean, you're a real charmer. You can talk the birds out of the trees. So I'm not a bit surprised that you managed to get away without any casualties.
But it is about talking to people, Keith. Yeah, that's all it is.
Well, it's 26 minutes past the hour, and although we were late getting on, we should get off on time. Apologies for the late start. At the moment, I did explain to everybody yesterday, Paul, that we're on a very, very limited output at the moment. We can't do all the things we want, but we are aiming towards April, when we can actually get back on track, as long as we get the finances. And there was a little bit of headway yesterday, so I hope that we can come back and provide the service that people deserve, and the service which we're perfectly capable of providing. But COVID and perhaps the attitude of the government, who to me is they just threw money around, and like Marie Antoinette said, let them eat cake, and they've been busy eating cake, and God help them when they actually now find out they've got to go back to no, I'm not going to say bacon sandwich because that's so good, but cheese and tomato.
Well, as I say, Keith, you're absolutely right. I don't think the money was dispersed properly. Secondly, the hospitality, which is 10% of Britain's GDP, is the one that was hit. They seem to pick on hospitality. Well, it's the first one that will come back. Hospitality is the thing that glues us all together as people in the United Kingdom. So I do think that could have been handled better. And I'm counting the days till the pub opens and we can all non-social distance.
Well, I think what you better do, Paul, is you better share this program with as many publicans as you possibly know, and because your son is in the business, in the trade. Because one of the nice things that we'll be able to do is to say, the government picked on you and they picked on us in television. We better get together. Shall we get together over a pint in your pub? And if you've called the meeting, you pay for the drinks. It's 8:28. Time to say goodbye. Thank you, Paul, for being with us again. Am I seeing you later?
Might do. I've got to do a few things, a few issues to deal with.
Okay. We need to talk later in the day because I know that quite often at this time of the morning you zip off and then I can't find you for a few hours. So I just want to make sure we touch base. So thank you for being with us. Your usual charming self. And in many ways, one might say you are schizophrenic in as much as you're a copper and a banker. But that experience over a number of years in both is very valuable at the moment, because if there are two things that are a problem, it's law and order, and it's the financial system and the economy. So thanks for being with us, and we'll talk to you again later.
Just a
quickie.
All I need, Keith, is to be an estate agent, and I'll probably be the most hated person in the country. Police, estate agent, and banker.
All right. Well, this is who we are. Mirador Television, and you can catch this program if you're interested in catching this program later on in the day, because it circulates on social media, and you can tap in to see what lunacy has been going on at 7:30 in the morning. But until tomorrow, toodle pip.
Toodle pip.